The cheap laminate floor stuck to my shoes as I hurried between tables, the sound making that distinctive peeling noise with each step. 6 hours into my double shift at Rosario's, and my lower back screamed in protest. The restaurant hummed with the usual Friday night chaos, clattering plates, bursts of laughter, and the constant sizzle from the kitchen. I tucked a strand of hair behind my ear, feeling it immediately fall back across my face, damp with sweat. "Table 7 needs drinks, Ellie," Marco barked from behind the bar, not bothering to look up from the martini he was mixing. "On it," I called back, forcing brightness into my voice that I didn't feel. I'd learned early that cheerfulness, even fake, meant better tips, and God knew I needed every dollar tonight. The eviction notice taped to my apartment door this morning had made that abundantly clear. 3 months behind on rent, and my landlord's patience had finally run out. I had 72 hours to come up with $2,400 or find somewhere else to live. With my credit score and bank account both hovering near zero, the latter seemed more likely. I balanced the tray of drinks, weaving through the maze of tables. The scent of garlic and tomato sauce hung heavy in the air, mingling with perfume and cologne from the diners. My uniform, a white button-up and black slacks, was stained with splashes of various sauces despite my best efforts. The restaurant owner was too cheap to replace them more than once a year. That's when I first noticed the back corner booth. Unlike the rest of the restaurant, that section remained conspicuously empty except for 3 men. The booth was partially hidden by a decorative wine rack, offering a clear view of the entire restaurant while remaining somewhat secluded. It wasn't my section, but I couldn't help stealing glances while delivering drinks. The man in the center commanded attention without trying. He couldn't have been older than 35, with dark hair cut precisely, expensive enough that it didn't look expensive. His suit, charcoal gray and impeccably tailored, made the businessmen at the other tables look like they were wearing costumes. 2 larger men flanked him, their expressions blank, eyes constantly scanning the room. "Who's that?" I whispered to Nadia as we passed in the narrow service corridor. She followed my gaze and her eyes widened. "You don't know?" she hissed, pulling me further from view. "That's Dante Russo. He owns half the waterfront, and probably the other half too, unofficially." The name registered vaguely, whispered conversations, newspaper headlines I'd glanced at. The Russo family had deep roots in the city, and deeper connections. The kind nobody talked about openly. "What's he doing here?" I asked. Rosario's was decent, but hardly the caliber of restaurant someone like him would frequent. Nadia shrugged. "Monthly visit. Marco says he's been coming here since it opened. Some kind of loyalty thing." She lowered her voice further. "Nobody serves that table except Marco's nephew. Family only." I nodded, suddenly eager to finish my shift without drawing any attention. Something about the man's presence made the air feel charged, dangerous. I'd spent my entire life trying to be invisible, and tonight was definitely not the night to be noticed. The next hour passed in a blur of orders and complaints. My feet throbbed inside my worn-out shoes, and the phantom weight of my problems made each step heavier. A baby started wailing at table 12. The kitchen was backed up again. 2 college guys tried to order drinks with obviously fake IDs. Just another Friday at Rosario's. Then it happened. I was rushing past the corner booth with a tray full of desserts when Marco's nephew, a gangly 19-year-old named Vincent, tripped over someone's outstretched foot. The bottle of expensive red wine he was carrying tumbled from his hands, its contents arcing through the air in slow motion, directly toward Dante Russo's immaculate suit. I didn't think. My body moved on instinct. I lunged forward, abandoning my own tray, and somehow managed to catch the bottle midair with my left hand. My right hand grabbed a cloth napkin from an empty table, intercepting most of the airborne liquid before it could reach its target. Time seemed to freeze. The restaurant fell silent. Vincent stood paralyzed, his face drained of color. I remained awkwardly positioned between tables, wine-soaked napkin in one hand, rescued bottle in the other, suddenly aware of everyone staring, including Dante Russo. His eyes, a startling shade of amber, locked onto mine with an intensity that made my breath catch. Not angry, as I'd expected, but curious. Assessing. "I'm so sorry," I stammered, backing away. I didn't mean to intrude, What's your name? His voice was quiet but carried easily in the silent restaurant. Deep, with a slight rasp, like expensive whiskey poured over gravel. Ellie Winters. I shouldn't have told him my real name. Some deep-rooted instinct warned against it. But lying seemed impossible under that steady gaze. His mouth curved slightly, not quite a smile. Quick reflexes, Ellie Winters. One of his companions whispered something in his ear. Dante nodded without taking his eyes off me. You work here long? 3 years, I answered, unsure why it mattered. My heart hammered against my ribs. Around us, conversations slowly resumed, though significantly quieter than before. He studied me for another moment, then gestured to the now empty wine bottle. Bring another, and a glass for yourself. I blinked in confusion. Sir, this isn't my section, and I'm still on shift. Marco won't mind, he replied with absolute certainty. As if summoned, Marco appeared at my elbow, his usual scowl replaced with a deferential smile I'd never seen before. Of course not. Take all the time you need, Ellie. I'll cover your tables. He took the empty tray from my hands, nodding encouragingly toward the booth. I felt like I was having an out-of-body experience. This couldn't be happening. I just wanted to finish my shift, go home, and cry into my pillow about my impending homelessness. Not whatever this was. Sit, Dante said, gesturing to the space beside him as one of his men slid out to make room. It wasn't a request. I sat, keenly aware of my stained uniform, messy hair, and the exhaustion I knew showed on my face. The leather seat felt cool against my overheated skin. Up close, I could smell his cologne, subtle cedar notes with something darker underneath. The booth's privacy suddenly felt confining. Vincent returned with another bottle of wine, hands visibly shaking as he poured 2 glasses. One for Dante, one for me. Then he disappeared so quickly he might as well have evaporated. 2 quick reflexes, Dante said, raising his glass slightly. I mirrored the gesture automatically, taking a small sip. The wine was exquisite, complex and smooth, in a way that made the house wine I occasionally splurged on taste like vinegar in comparison. Thank you, I said, unsure what else to add. But I should probably get back to, you're in trouble. It wasn't a question. I froze, wine glass halfway to the table. Excuse me? His eyes never left my face. Financial trouble. Serious, from the looks of it. A chill ran down my spine. How could he possibly know that? Had my desperation been that obvious? Or worse, had he been watching me before tonight? I don't know what you're talking about, I lied, the words sounding hollow even to my own ears. He didn't bother responding to the obvious falsehood. Instead, he reached into his jacket and withdrew a small leather notebook and gold pen. He wrote something, tore out the page, and slid it across the table. An address in the wealthy part of town, and tomorrow's date with a time, 10 a.m. What is this? I asked, not touching the paper. A job offer. He took another sip of wine, watching my reaction over the rim of his glass. You start tomorrow. The absurdity of the situation finally broke through my shock. I already have a job. Even as I said it, I thought about the eviction notice, the stack of unpaid bills, my empty refrigerator. No, he corrected, his tone gentler than his words. You have indentured servitude that barely keeps you fed. I'm offering a solution to your problems. You don't know anything about my problems, I said, finding a spark of defiance despite my fear. For the first time, he smiled fully. It transformed his face from intimidating to devastating. Eviction notice, 3 months behind. 72 hours to pay or vacate. Car needs transmission work. Hospital bills from last year still unpaid. Student loans in default. Did I miss anything important? My blood turned to ice. There was no way he could know all that unless... You've been investigating me, I whispered, fighting the urge to flee. Why? He leaned back, regarding me with those unnerving amber eyes. Let's call it recognition of an uncommon quality. Loyalty. Resourcefulness. Quick thinking under pressure. He gestured around the restaurant. Most people here would have let that wine hit me, then enjoyed watching the fallout. You acted without hesitation to prevent a stranger's inconvenience, at your own expense. I glanced down at my wine-stained sleeve. It would be hell to clean, and I couldn't afford a replacement. What kind of job? I finally asked, hating the tremor in my voice. Personal assistant, companion for certain social events, occasional translator when needed. He named a monthly salary that made me choke on my wine. That's ridiculous, I said, once I'd stopped coughing. Nobody pays that much for an assistant. I do. His tone brooked no argument. The position requires unique qualifications, discretion, adaptability, the ability to keep calm in unusual circumstances. His gaze intensified. You'll have an apartment in my building, a car, healthcare. And what do I have to do for all this? I asked, suspicion creeping into my voice. Nothing in my life had ever come without a terrible price. Something flashed in his eyes, amusement perhaps, or approval. Nothing illegal, nothing unethical, and nothing, he emphasized, of a sexual nature, unless you wish it. Heat flooded my cheeks. I don't. Then it won't be an issue. He finished his wine. Be at that address at 10 tomorrow. Bring whatever matters to you. Leave the rest. One of his men murmured something in Italian. Dante checked his watch and nodded. I'm afraid I have another engagement. But I look forward to our arrangement, Ellie Winters. I haven't agreed to anything, I pointed out, finding a last scrap of courage. He studied me for a long moment. You will. It wasn't arrogance in his voice, but certainty, as if he'd already seen how this would play out. Then they were gone, leaving nothing but an empty wine bottle, a generous tip, and a piece of paper with an address that promised salvation or damnation, possibly both. I sat in the booth long after they'd left, the restaurant noise rushing back around me like a tide. The logical part of my brain screamed warnings. People like me didn't get miraculous job offers from powerful men. Every instinct for self-preservation told me to burn that paper and forget tonight ever happened. But as my fingers closed around the expensive notepaper, all I could think about was the eviction notice, the mounting debts, the exhaustion of always running in place, never getting ahead. And beneath it all, the unsettling feeling that I'd already made my decision the moment I caught that falling wine. Sleep eluded me that night. I tossed and turned in my tiny studio apartment, my mind racing with possibilities and warnings. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Dante Russo's penetrating gaze, felt the weight of his attention like a physical touch. By dawn, I'd cycled through every emotion: hope, fear, suspicion, curiosity, and landed nowhere certain. The address he'd given me led to a gleaming high-rise in the most exclusive part of downtown. Floor-to-ceiling windows reflected the morning sun, making the entire structure shimmer like a mirage. I stood on the sidewalk across the street, clutching my pathetic duffel bag containing everything I considered irreplaceable. Mostly photos, a few books, and the silver locket my grandmother had given me before she died. You're making a mistake, I whispered to myself, even as I crossed the street toward the building. The doorman, a broad-shouldered man with an earpiece barely concealed beneath his uniform, straightened as I approached. Ms. Winters, he greeted me, as if he'd been expecting me. My stomach twisted. Of course they knew I was coming. They probably had people watching my apartment to make sure I showed up. Mr. Russo is waiting for you in the penthouse, the doorman continued, opening the door with a white-gloved hand. Gregory will escort you up. Gregory turned out to be another mountain of a man in a well-tailored suit who appeared silently from an alcove in the lobby. He led me to a private elevator at the back of the marble-floored atrium, using a keycard to access it. We rode in silence, the elevator climbing smoothly to the top of the building. My ears popped from the rapid ascent. Mr. Russo appreciates punctuality, Gregory finally said as the elevator slowed. It was the only acknowledgement that I existed. The doors opened directly into a foyer larger than my entire apartment. Sunlight streamed through wall-to-wall windows, illuminating a space that belonged in a design magazine. All clean lines, neutral tones, and strategic splashes of color. The view beyond the windows stole my breath. The entire city spread out below, the harbor glittering in the distance. You came. Dante's voice drew my attention away from the view. He stood in the doorway to what appeared to be a living room, dressed more casually than the previous night. Dark trousers and a crisp white shirt with the sleeves rolled to his elbows, revealing strong forearms and an expensive watch. "I'm still deciding," I countered, finding some small courage. I came to hear more details before making any commitment. Something like respect flickered in his eyes. "Fair enough." He gestured toward the living room. "Please." I followed him, trying not to gawk at my surroundings. The living room continued the theme of understated luxury, leather furniture, abstract art on the walls, a fireplace that probably cost more than 4 years of my rent. A woman in a gray dress, obviously staff of some kind, appeared with a tray of coffee. "Diana will show you to your quarters after we talk," Dante said, pouring coffee into 2 porcelain cups so delicate they looked like they might shatter if handled too roughly. "Sugar? Cream? Black is fine," I said, accepting the cup with hands I forced not to tremble. The coffee smelled incredible, rich and complex, nothing like the burnt diner sludge I was used to. He sat opposite me in a leather armchair, his movements fluid and controlled. "You have questions." I took a sip of coffee to gather my thoughts. "What exactly would I be doing as your assistant?" "Managing my schedule, accompanying me to certain business functions, overseeing household staff, occasional travel." He watched me over his cup. "Your language skills are particularly valuable." "Russian, yes, and conversational Mandarin." I nearly dropped my coffee. "How did you—" "Your academic records," he said simply, as if invading my privacy was the most natural thing in the world. "Double major in international relations and linguistics. Impressive, especially while working full-time." "Not impressive enough to get me a job in my field," I said bitterly, thinking of the countless rejections, the closed doors, their loss, my gain. He set his cup down. "You'll have health care, as I mentioned, a car, a clothing allowance, and the apartment on the floor below this one." "An entire apartment?" I echoed in disbelief. "You'll need to be available at odd hours." "Living in the building makes that possible." His tone made it clear this wasn't negotiable. "Your personal life remains your own, but discretion is non-negotiable. Anything you see or hear while working for me stays private." I nodded slowly, still trying to process everything. "And what happens if I want to leave?" Something darkened in his expression. Just for a moment, then it was gone. "You're not a prisoner, Ellie. You can leave any time. Though I would appreciate 2 weeks' notice, like any employer." It sounded reasonable. Too reasonable. Why me? There must be hundreds of qualified people who jump at this opportunity. Most people see money and power and think only of how to take it for themselves. His gaze was uncomfortably direct. "You saw danger and acted to protect a stranger with no expectation of reward. That kind of instinct can't be taught." I wanted to believe him, but nothing in my life had prepared me for sudden windfalls without painful catches. "There's something you're not telling me," I said quietly. He smiled, a real one that reached his eyes. "Many things, but nothing that will harm you." He stood. "Come, see the apartment before you decide." We descended 1 floor in the private elevator. The doors opened to reveal another foyer, smaller than the penthouse, but still luxurious. Dante used a keycard to unlock the door, then handed it to me. "Your temporary key will get you permanent access today." The apartment was stunning. Open floor plan, modern kitchen, 2 bedrooms, and a balcony with the same breathtaking view as the penthouse. Everything was furnished, tastefully, in shades of blue and cream that I would have chosen myself. "The closet has some basics in your size," Dante said, gesturing toward the master bedroom. "The rest you can purchase with this." He handed me a credit card with my name embossed on it. "Your first month's salary has been deposited in your account already. The rest of your financial obligations have been addressed." I stared at the card. "You paid my debts?" "Considered it a signing bonus," he replied smoothly. "Clean slate." My fingers closed around the card. The sensation of a weight lifting from my shoulders was so intense it left me dizzy. No more eviction. No more dodging calls from debt collectors. No more choosing between electricity and food. "Why?" I whispered, emotion making my voice rough. He stepped closer, close enough that I could smell that same intoxicating cologne from last night. Because I can. His voice had dropped to match mine. Because I want to. Because some people deserve better than what life has given them. For a moment, we stood there, separated by inches and worlds. His amber eyes searched mine for something. I wasn't sure what. I should go, he said finally, stepping back. Take today to settle in. Tomorrow, be ready at 8. Diana will show you everything you need to know about the household. He moved toward the door, but paused with his hand on the handle. One last thing, Ellie. I looked up, still dazed by everything. While you're with me, you'll be safe. But that safety comes with visibility. People will notice you, talk about you. Some may approach you. His expression hardened. If anyone makes you uncomfortable, anyone at all, you tell me immediately. Understood? I nodded, unsettled by his intensity. Good. The hardness vanished, replaced by something almost gentle. Welcome home, Ellie. Then he was gone, leaving me alone in an apartment worth more than I would have earned in a decade at Rosario's. The next few days passed in a blur of new routines and discoveries. Diana, I learned, was Dante's household manager and my guide to this new world. She showed me how to use the building's security systems, introduced me to staff, and explained my duties with military precision. Mr. Russo values efficiency, she told me as we reviewed his calendar. Learn to anticipate his needs before he expresses them. How long have you worked for him? I asked, hoping for some insight. Her expression remained professional but warmed slightly. 8 years, since he took over the family business. I wanted to ask more about the family business, about Dante himself, but something in her manner discouraged personal questions. Instead, I focused on absorbing everything she taught me. By the end of the week, I had settled into a routine of sorts. Mornings began with reviewing Dante's schedule and preparing briefings on anyone he was meeting that day. Most afternoons were spent accompanying him to various appointments. Legitimate business meetings at office buildings downtown. Lunches with people who seemed important, but whose roles remained mysterious. Dante himself remained an enigma. Professional, but not cold. Demanding, but never cruel. He never raised his voice, yet everyone around him moved with the tense readiness of prey animals in a predator's territory. Everyone except me. With me, he was different. More relaxed. Sometimes even playful in a restrained way, his dry humor catching me off guard. He asked my opinions on things, books, current events, people we met, and actually listened to my answers. It was during the second week that things began to shift. We were returning from a meeting with what I gathered was a shipping executive. The conversation had involved a lot of coded language and significant looks that I pretended not to notice. As we settled into the back of his Mercedes, Dante seemed tense, his jaw tight. Problem? I asked, reviewing my notes from the meeting. Possibly. He stared out the window for a moment. What did you think of Milano? I considered the shipping executive we'd just left. Nervous. Kept looking at his phone, and he contradicted himself about the delivery timeline. Dante's eyebrows rose slightly. Most people wouldn't have caught that. I shrugged. Most people don't spend years serving tables. You learn to read people when your tips depend on it. A small smile. What else? He wasn't afraid of you, I said, the realization crystallizing as I spoke. Everyone else is, at least a little. He was nervous, but not about you, about something else. Dante studied me with new interest. You continue to surprise me, Ellie Winters. Before I could respond, his phone rang. He answered, listened for a moment, then cursed softly in Italian. His eyes flicked to me. Change of plans, he said after ending the call. I need to make a stop. You can wait in the car. I'll come with you, I said automatically. In case you need anything. Something flashed across his face. Concern? This isn't a business meeting. I understand, I replied, though I didn't. Not really. He hesitated, then nodded once. Stay close to me. Don't wander. The driver took us to an industrial area near the docks, stopping outside a warehouse with no visible signage. Two men in dark clothing stood guard at a side entrance. They straightened as our car approached. "Wait here," Dante instructed the driver, then turned to me. "Last chance to stay in the car, Ellie." I met his gaze steadily. "I'm your assistant. I assist." His mouth quirked. "So you do." He reached into the car's compartment and removed a handgun, checking it before tucking it inside his jacket. My breath caught. Despite all the hints and whispers, this was the first concrete evidence of who Dante Russo really was. What he was. He saw my expression and paused. "Are you afraid?" The strange thing was, I wasn't. Not of him. No. He studied me for a long moment, then nodded. "Stay behind me. Don't speak unless spoken to. And if anything happens, anything at all, you run. Don't look back. The driver will get you home." The warehouse was dimly lit and smelled of dust and salt. We followed one of the guards through a maze of shipping containers until we reached a small office area. Inside, 3 men were waiting. 2 standing, 1 seated. The seated man had a swollen face and split lip. His hands were zip-tied to the chair arms. My stomach dropped. I knew immediately what this was, and everything in me screamed to leave. But leaving meant abandoning the fragile safety I'd found. It meant returning to desperation. So I stayed, silent and still, as Dante approached the injured man. Their conversation was quiet, punctuated by long silences, and the occasional harsh word in Italian. I focused on breathing evenly, on keeping my expression neutral. 10 minutes later, it was over. No additional violence, just tense conversation, and what appeared to be an agreement. The man was released from the chair. As we walked back to the car, Dante placed his hand lightly on my lower back. The first time he'd touched me since we met. His palm radiated heat through my blouse. "You did well," he said quietly. "Most people would have run. Most people haven't been where I've been," I replied, surprising myself with my honesty. His hand tightened slightly against my back. "And where is that, Ellie?" I thought about my childhood in foster care. The years of struggling, the constant fear of destitution. Rock bottom, with a view of what's below it. He was silent for a long moment. "No one will hurt you again, not while you're with me." It should have sounded threatening. Instead, it felt like the most sincere promise anyone had ever made me. In the car, he sat closer than usual, his presence both comforting and overwhelming. "Ask your questions," he said, watching my profile. "I know you have them." I turned to face him fully. Who was he? Someone who forgot his obligations. Dante's voice was matter-of-fact. "He's been reminded." "Did you hurt him before I arrived?" "No, others did, on my behalf. No evasion, no justification." I nodded slowly. "Will it happen again? Will I see worse?" His eyes searched mine. "Possibly. My world isn't always civilized, but I try to keep bloodshed to a minimum. Bad for business." "Is that what this is? Business?" "Everything is business, Ellie." His gaze softened fractionally. "But some things matter more than profit." I looked out the window at the passing city lights, weighing my next words carefully. I can't be part of hurting people, even indirectly. He was quiet so long I thought he might not answer. "I won't ask you to be," he finally said. "But I won't lie to you about who I am either." "And who is that?" I asked, turning back to him. In the dim car interior, his amber eyes gleamed. "Someone who protects what's his." The words hung between us, loaded with meaning I wasn't ready to examine. But as we drove back to the gleaming tower I now called home, one thought kept circling in my mind. I was becoming one of those things Dante Russo considered his. And the most terrifying part was how little that frightened me. Fall gave way to winter, and I settled deeper into my new life. The initial strangeness faded, replaced by routines that began to feel natural. Wake up in my luxury apartment. Review Dante's schedule over coffee that cost more than I used to make in an hour. Choose an outfit from a closet filled with clothes I once would have only gazed at through store windows. After the warehouse incident, Dante kept his more questionable business dealings separate from my duties. But I wasn't naive. The hushed phone calls, the meetings that disappeared from the calendar, the occasional bruised knuckles on his security team. They told their own story. "You're thinking too loudly," Dante remarked one evening as we rode back from a charity gala. Outside, snow fell in fat, lazy flakes, coating the city in pristine white that would turn to gray slush by morning. I smiled faintly, smoothing the silk of my evening gown. Another gift from him. Midnight blue, backless, worth more than my old car. Just tired. It was a long night. He studied me in that intense way of his, seeing too much. "You handled the commissioner's wife beautifully. Most people can't manage her for more than 5 minutes without reaching for a drink." She's lonely," I said with a shrug. "Her husband parades her around like an accessory, then ignores her. All she wants is genuine conversation." Dante's mouth curved. "Your empathy is both your greatest strength and your most dangerous vulnerability." "Is that your way of telling me I'm too soft?" I asked, meeting his gaze directly. Over the past months, I'd grown bolder with him, less afraid of overstepping. "No," he said thoughtfully. "It's my way of saying you see people clearly, even when they don't deserve your compassion." The car slowed as we approached our building. Before the driver could open the door, Dante placed his hand over mine on the seat between us. His touch sent a jolt of awareness through my body, a reaction I'd been fighting with increasing difficulty. "Have dinner with me tomorrow," he said. Not a command, but not quite a question either. "We have dinner together most nights," I pointed out. Part of my job was attending business dinners, acting as a buffer or translator when needed. "Not a business dinner." His fingers tightened slightly over mine. "Just us." My heart stuttered. "Dante, it's time we discuss certain things," he continued, his voice dropping lower. "Things I've been postponing." Before I could respond, the door opened, letting in a gust of cold air and snowflakes. The moment shattered. Dante exited first, then offered his hand to help me out. The doorman greeted us with a deferential nod as we entered the warm lobby. In the elevator, silence stretched between us, charged with unspoken words. When we reached my floor, Dante held the door open. 8 o'clock, he said, nothing formal. I hesitated, then nodded once before stepping out. As the doors closed, I caught his expression. Intent, heated, possessive in a way that should have sent me running. Instead, it kept me awake most of the night. The next evening, I spent an embarrassing amount of time choosing what to wear. "Nothing formal," he'd said, which still left a bewildering array of options in my new wardrobe. I finally settled on a simple cashmere sweater and tailored pants. Elegant, but not trying too hard. At precisely 8, I rode the elevator to the penthouse. Diana opened the door, her usual professional mask firmly in place, though I caught a flicker of something in her eyes as she looked at me. Curiosity? Concern? "Mr. Russo is in the study," she said, taking my coat. He asked not to be disturbed. The penthouse was unusually quiet. No security personnel visible, no staff except Diana. "Is everyone gone?" I asked, following her down the hallway. "Mr. Russo wanted privacy tonight." Her tone revealed nothing, but her words sent a flutter of nerves through my stomach. The study door was ajar. I knocked lightly, then entered when Dante called for me to come in. The room was my favorite in the penthouse. Walls of books, leather furniture, a fireplace currently casting dancing shadows across the space. Floor-to-ceiling windows showcased the snow-covered city and harbor beyond. Dante stood by one of the windows, silhouetted against the night sky. He'd changed from his usual suit into dark jeans and a charcoal sweater that made his shoulders look even broader. In his hand, he held a glass of amber liquid, whiskey probably. He turned as I entered, and the look in his eyes made my mouth go dry. "Ellie," he said, my name sounding different in his voice tonight. Softer, more intimate. "You wanted to talk," I reminded him, suddenly nervous. He gestured to the couch in front of the fire. "Sit. Drink?" I nodded, watching as he poured another whiskey and handed it to me. Our fingers brushed during the exchange, sending tiny sparks across my skin. Dante sat beside me, closer than necessary, but not crowding. 3 months, he said after a moment. "You've been with me 3 months today." I blinked in surprise. You remember the exact day? A faint smile. I remember everything about you, Ellie. The simple statement shouldn't have affected me so strongly, but heat bloomed in my chest and rose to my cheeks. I took a sip of whiskey to hide my reaction, savoring the warm burn down my throat. You've exceeded every expectation, he continued. You learn quickly. Adapt to any situation. Handle people with remarkable skill. He turned slightly to face me more directly. You've become indispensable. I'm just doing my job, I said, though we both knew it had become much more than that. Are you happy here? He asked unexpectedly. The question caught me off guard. I considered it seriously, looking past the material comfort to the heart of the matter. Yes, I admitted, though I never expected to be, because of who I am. Not a question. I met his gaze steadily. Because of who I thought you'd be. Interest sharpened his features. And who did you think I'd be? Cruel, I said honestly. Cold. Someone who took pleasure in power for its own sake. And now? His voice had roughened slightly. I looked down at my glass, gathering courage. Now I know you're dangerous, but not cruel. Controlled, but not cold. I risked looking up again. You protect what's yours, just like you said. Sometimes ruthlessly, but there are lines you won't cross. Satisfaction flickered in his expression. You see me clearly. Not entirely, I countered. There are parts of your life you keep separate. To protect you. From what? He set his glass down and leaned closer, close enough that I could feel the heat radiating from his body. From choices. From consequences. From the weight of knowledge. My heart thrummed against my ribs. I'm stronger than you think. I know exactly how strong you are. His hand came up to touch my face, fingertips tracing my cheekbone with devastating gentleness. That's what worries me. I should have pulled away, should have maintained the professional boundary that was rapidly disintegrating between us. Instead, I leaned into his touch, eyes fluttering closed for just a moment. Tell me to stop, he murmured, his thumb brushing the corner of my mouth. Tell me this isn't what you want. I can't, I whispered, opening my eyes to meet his gaze. Because it would be a lie. Something fierce and hungry flashed across his face. His hand slid to the nape of my neck, tangling in my hair, drawing me closer. I've wanted you since the moment you caught that wine bottle, he confessed, voice dropping to a growl. Every day since has been an exercise in restraint. Why wait? I asked, breathless with anticipation. Because I needed you to see me clearly before making this choice. His forehead touched mine. Because once I have you, Ellie, I won't let you go. The possessiveness in his words should have frightened me. Instead, it sent a thrill down my spine, awakening something primal I hadn't known existed within me. I'm already yours, I admitted. The truth I'd been fighting for weeks finally breaking free. I have been for a while now. His control snapped. In one fluid motion, he pulled me onto his lap, his mouth claiming mine with a hunger that stole my breath. I melted against him, arms winding around his neck, fingers threading through his hair. He kissed like he did everything else, with absolute focus and mastery, leaving no room for hesitation or doubt. His hands roamed my body, learning every curve through the thin cashmere. When we finally broke apart, we were both breathing hard, his pupils dilated until only a thin ring of amber remained. If we don't stop now, he warned, voice ragged, we won't stop at all. I traced the strong line of his jaw with my fingertips. Then don't stop. He stood in one smooth movement, lifting me with him. I wrapped my legs around his waist as he carried me from the study, down the hallway, to his bedroom. A space I'd glimpsed but never entered before. He laid me on the massive bed with unexpected tenderness, then stood back to look at me, his gaze burning with naked desire. Last chance to change your mind, he said, though we both knew neither of us could turn back now. In answer, I reached for him, pulling him down to me. Later, much later, I lay with my head on his chest, listening to the steady rhythm of his heart. His fingers traced lazy patterns along my spine, raising pleasant shivers. Outside, snow continued falling, cocooning the penthouse in muffled silence. What happens now? I finally asked, voicing the question that had begun forming in the back of my mind. His arm tightened around me. Whatever we want. It's not that simple. I propped myself up to see his face. I work for you. People will talk. A sardonic smile curved his lips. People already talk, Ellie. They've been speculating about us since your second week. I frowned. That's uncomfortable. It's protection, in a way. He tucked a strand of hair behind my ear. My enemies will assume you know everything. That you're fully under my protection. And am I? I asked. Under your protection? His expression turned serious. With everything I have. But it means you're a target now, more than before. I considered this, the implications settling like lead in my stomach. Because they'll think they can get to you through me. Yes. No sugarcoating, no platitudes. I laid my head back on his chest, processing. I should be more afraid than I am. His chest rumbled with a soft laugh. You've never reacted the way you should from the moment we met. His fingers resumed their path along my spine. It's one of the things I love about you. The word hung in the air between us, neither of us acknowledging it directly. Too soon, too dangerous a territory to navigate tonight. Instead, I asked, will things change? With work? Professionally, no. You're still the best assistant I've ever had. His tone lightened. Personally, his hand drifted lower, cupping my hip. I think we've established some significant changes. I smiled against his skin. Diana's going to know immediately. Diana's known this was inevitable longer than either of us. He shifted, rolling me beneath him, his weight a delicious pressure. Any other concerns? Looking up at him, this dangerous, complicated man who had somehow become the center of my world, I made my choice fully and finally. None that can't wait until morning. His answering smile was possessive and tender all at once. Good. Because I'm nowhere near finished with you tonight. As his mouth found mine again, one last coherent thought fluttered through my mind. I'd walked into the lion's den and found not just safety, but home. Spring arrived with a crescendo of changes. The snow melted, revealing the city's bones once more, and my relationship with Dante evolved from secret to acknowledged reality. Not with announcements or declarations, but in 1,000 small ways. His hand resting possessively at my lower back during meetings, the familiar way he'd brush his lips against my temple when saying goodbye, the unmistakable shift in how his associates treated me. No longer just the assistant. Now, undeniably, his. I still maintained my apartment 1 floor below, but spent most nights in the penthouse. My clothes migrated upstairs piece by piece until Dante simply had a closet redesigned for me. My books appeared on his shelves, my preferred tea in his kitchen, my lotion on his bathroom counter. Small colonizations that he not only permitted, but encouraged. You're distracted, Dante observed one morning as we prepared for the day. He stood behind me as I put on earrings at his bathroom mirror, his reflection watching mine with that penetrating gaze that still made my heart skip. Just thinking about the Anderson meeting this afternoon, I lied, avoiding his eyes. The translation will be tricky. His hand settled on my shoulders, thumbs pressing gently into the tension I carried there. Try again, with the truth this time. I sighed, setting down the earring I'd been struggling with. It's nothing, really. He turned me to face him, one eyebrow raised in silent challenge. In the 3 months since our relationship had transformed, he'd become increasingly adept at reading my moods, my silences. A woman called yesterday, I admitted finally. While you were in your meeting with Salvatore. His expression sharpened. Who? She wouldn't say. Asked for you, then laughed when I said you were unavailable. I shrugged, trying to seem more nonchalant than I felt. Said to tell you, Valentina sends her regards. Something dangerous flickered behind his eyes, there and gone so quickly I almost missed it. His hands tightened momentarily on my shoulders before relaxing deliberately. An old acquaintance, he said, voice carefully neutral. Nothing to concern yourself with. She seemed familiar with you, I pressed, hating the insecurity creeping into my voice but unable to stop it. Very familiar. Dante's mouth curved slightly. Is that jealousy I hear, Ellie? Should it be? I countered, meeting his gaze directly. He studied me for a long moment, then brought his hand to my face, thumb brushing my cheekbone in that tender gesture I'd come to crave. No, he said simply. Valentina is from another life, before you. She means nothing. Then why did she call? A shadow crossed his face, to cause exactly this reaction, to unsettle you, to create doubt. His other hand slid to the nape of my neck, anchoring me to him. Did she succeed? I wanted to deny it, but honesty had become our currency. A little, I admitted. I know there were others before me. I'm not naive. Others, he agreed, his voice dropping lower. Not another you. He drew me closer, until I could feel his breath against my lips. There has never been anyone like you in my life, Ellie, nor will there be after. The possessive certainty in his voice sent a shiver down my spine, half apprehension, half desire. You sound very sure of that. I am. He kissed me then, slow and thorough, making his point more effectively than words ever could. When he finally pulled back, his eyes had darkened with familiar heat. Now, about that Anderson meeting. The subject of Valentina was closed. For now. The Anderson meeting went smoothly, my worries about the translation proving unfounded. Dante's Russian client seemed satisfied with the terms, and we celebrated with dinner at an exclusive restaurant overlooking the harbor. As we waited for dessert, Dante received a text that made his expression tighten momentarily, before he schooled his features back to neutrality. Problem? I asked, attuned now to the subtle shifts in his mood. Nothing urgent. He pocketed his phone and took a sip of wine. How do you feel about a trip? The abrupt change of subject caught me off guard. What kind of trip? Italy. 2 weeks. My mother's birthday is approaching, and she's been asking to meet you. I nearly choked on my wine. Your mother? You want me to meet your family? A rare flash of amusement crossed his face. Is that so surprising? We've been together for months, Ellie. I struggled to articulate the complexity of my feelings. From what you've told me about your family, they're traditional. They are. His expression grew more serious. Which is why it matters that they meet you, that they understand your place in my life. My place in his life. We'd never labeled what we were to each other. Boyfriend-girlfriend seemed absurdly inadequate, and we'd carefully avoided more serious definitions. But meeting his family, especially his formidable mother, who had maintained her position of respect in their world even after his father's death years ago, that was a statement in itself. When would we leave? I asked, heart racing with equal parts excitement and trepidation. Friday. 3 days away. We'll stay at the family estate outside Florence. I nodded slowly, imagining the ancient Tuscan villa he'd occasionally mentioned. I should practice my Italian. His smile returned, warming his amber eyes. Your Italian is already better than you let on. I've heard you speaking with Marco from security. Eavesdropping, Mr. Russo, I teased, grateful for the lighter moment. Appreciating, he corrected, reaching across the table to take my hand, always appreciating. The dessert arrived, momentarily distracting us both. As we shared the rich chocolate creation, I noticed Dante scanning the restaurant with more attention than usual. His thumb absently traced the inside of my wrist as he surveyed the other diners, a habit I'd come to recognize as a sign of underlying tension. You're worried about something, I observed quietly. His gaze snapped back to mine, a flicker of surprise crossing his face before he masked it. Just a precaution, he said, his tone casual but eyes alert. Finish your dessert. The car will be waiting. The drive home was silent, Dante working on his tablet while I gazed out at the nighttime cityscape. When we reached the penthouse, he disappeared into his study with a brief kiss and a murmured apology about business that couldn't wait. I changed and went to bed alone, unusual enough these days to leave me unsettled. Hours later, I woke to the mattress dipping as Dante slid in beside me. The clock read 2:37 a.m. I turned toward him, detecting the faint scent of his cologne mingled with something else. Cigarette smoke, though he didn't smoke. Everything okay? I murmured sleepily as his arm curved around my waist, drawing me against his chest. Better now. he replied, his voice rough with exhaustion. His hand stroked my hair, more to soothe himself than me, I suspected. Go back to sleep. Instead, I tilted my head up to study his face in the dim light filtering through the windows. You had a meeting at this hour. Not a question, but he answered anyway. A situation needed handling. The text at dinner? He nodded once, his jaw tight. I traced the line of that jaw with my fingertips, feeling the tension there. Will you tell me? For a long moment he said nothing, and I thought he might refuse. Then he sighed, capturing my hand and bringing it to his lips. Valentina's brother made some poor choices tonight, choices that could have had consequences for people under my protection. A chill ran through me. Is he alive? Yes. Dante's voice was matter of fact. Whether he stays that way depends on his sister's ability to control him. I swallowed hard. The reality of who Dante was, of the world he inhabited, crashing back with brutal clarity. Despite months of living in his orbit, there were still moments when the truth struck me anew. Does it bother you? He asked, watching me intently. Knowing what I'm capable of? I considered the question seriously, owing him the honesty he always demanded. Sometimes, I admitted. Not because I fear you would hurt me, but because I worry about what you carry. The weight of those decisions. Something softened in his expression. You never cease to surprise me, he murmured, tracing my lower lip with his thumb. Most people would fear for themselves. I'm not most people. No? He agreed, drawing me closer. You're mine. And I protect what's mine, remember? I did remember. Those words from our first days together, now laden with months of deeper meaning, of promises kept and boundaries respected, of a man whose world was built on violence, but whose touch had never been anything but gentle with me. We leave for Italy on Friday, he said, changing the subject. Pack for various occasions. My mother will want to show you off. Show me off? I repeated, surprised. She doesn't even know me. She knows you're important to me, Dante said simply. That's enough for now. I nestled closer, finding my place against his chest, listening to the steady beat of his heart. Will I like her? A soft laugh rumbled through him. She's formidable, intimidating to most, but yes, I think you will. More importantly, she'll like you. How can you be so sure? His hand slid along my spine in a possessive caress, because she raised me to recognize value when I see it. And you, Ellie Winters, are the most valuable thing I've ever found. Italy was a revelation. We flew on Dante's private jet, arriving in Florence as the late afternoon sun bathed the ancient city in golden light. A sleek black SUV waited on the tarmac, along with 2 security personnel I recognized from Dante's rotating team. The drive to the estate took us through the Tuscan countryside, vineyards and olive groves stretching toward the horizon. After an hour, we turned onto a private road that wound uphill through cypresses and stone walls. At the crest, the villa appeared. 3 stories of honey-colored stone and terracotta tiles, surrounded by formal gardens and overlooking the valley below. It's beautiful, I breathed as the car pulled into a circular drive. It's been in the family for 4 generations, Dante said, his hand finding mine. My great-grandfather bought it when he first came to Italy. The front door opened before we'd fully stopped, revealing an elegant woman with silver-streaked dark hair and Dante's unmistakable amber eyes. Despite being well into her 60s, she carried herself with the straight-backed grace of a much younger woman. Mio figlio, she greeted, as Dante helped me from the car. Her voice was warm but refined, with a stronger accent than his. Her gaze immediately shifted to me, assessing in a way that reminded me powerfully of her son. Mama, Dante replied, embracing her briefly before turning to me. May I present Ellie Winters, Ellie, my mother, Sophia Russo. I extended my hand, summoning every bit of poise I'd cultivated over the past months. It's a pleasure to meet you, Mrs. Russo. Thank you for inviting me to your home. She ignored my hand, instead taking my face between her palms and studying me intently. So, she said after a moment that stretched my nerves to breaking, this is the woman who has bewitched my son. Before I could respond, Her serious expression melted into a warm smile. She leaned forward and kissed both my cheeks. "Call me Sophia, Kara. We are family here." Dante's hand settled at the small of my back, a subtle reassurance. The look he gave his mother held equal parts affection and warning. "Don't overwhelm her in the first 5 minutes, Mama." Sophia waved this away. "Nonsense. If she's strong enough to handle you, she can certainly handle an old woman's curiosity." She linked her arm through mine. "Come. You must be tired from your journey. I'll show you to your rooms." As we entered the villa's cool interior, I glanced back at Dante, who followed with an expression caught between amusement and resignation. He gave me a slight nod of encouragement. I turned back to his mother, whose arm remained linked with mine. "I've been looking forward to seeing where Dante grew up," I said truthfully. "He speaks of Italy often, but rarely of his childhood. My son has always been private," Sophia replied, leading me up a sweeping stone staircase. "Even as a boy, but he tells me you have a way of drawing him out." The subtle interrogation had begun. I recognized it for what it was, a mother's protective instinct, wrapped in graciousness and hospitality. Over the next hours, as we toured the villa and settled in, Sophia's questions continued, expertly woven into conversation. Where had I grown up? My education? Family? That last question had been the most difficult, admitting to my lack of family without inviting pity. Sophia's eyes had sharpened with interest rather than sympathy. "So you have made your own way," she said thoughtfully. "Built yourself without foundation. That requires remarkable strength." It was the first moment I felt she might genuinely approve of me. Dinner that evening was an elaborate affair, served in a dining room with frescoed ceilings and views of the countryside now silvered by moonlight. Other family members joined us. Dante's younger sister Lucia with her husband, a cousin whose name I immediately forgot, and an elderly uncle who spoke little but observed everything. I sat at Dante's right, acutely aware of being studied by every pair of eyes at the table. The conversation flowed primarily in Italian, though they switched to English whenever addressing me directly. Dante translated occasionally, his hand often finding mine under the table. "Tell me, Ellie," Lucia said during the second course, her English precise but heavily accented. "How did you and my brother meet? He is uncharacteristically vague on the details." Dante tensed beside me. I squeezed his hand reassuringly. "I was working as a waitress," I said truthfully. "Dante came into the restaurant and I made an impression." Sophia's eyebrows rose. "A waitress? How interesting." Her tone revealed nothing of whether she found this suitable or scandalous. "She saved me from wearing an excellent Barolo," Dante added, his thumb stroking the inside of my wrist. "Caught it mid-air. I've never seen reflexes like it." "Always the practical one, my son," Sophia said with a small smile, appreciating useful skills. "Among other qualities," Dante replied, his gaze meeting mine with an intensity that made me blush. Lucia laughed delightedly. "I've never seen him look at anyone that way," she told me, ignoring her brother's warning glance. "Like you've performed some miracle just by existing." "Enough, Lucia," Dante said, though without real heat. The conversation drifted to business matters, and I was grateful for the reprieve from direct attention. I observed instead, noting the dynamics between family members, the subtle shifts in Dante's demeanor. Here, surrounded by his blood, he seemed both more relaxed and more alert, a complex contradiction that fascinated me. Later, as we prepared for bed in the expansive suite we'd been given, I finally voiced the question that had been growing since our arrival. "Your mother, does she approve?" Dante paused in unbuttoning his shirt, regarding me thoughtfully. "Would it matter if she didn't?" I considered this as I removed my earrings. "To me, yes, in some ways. She's important to you." I met his gaze in the mirror. "To us? I don't know. Would it?" He crossed to stand behind me, his hands settling on my shoulders. "My mother's opinion matters to me. Her happiness matters." His eyes held mine in the reflection. "But my choice of who to love is mine alone. Love." He'd never said it directly before, though I'd felt it in 1,000 unspoken ways. My breath caught. "And I choose you, Ellie," he continued, turning me to face him. I chose you the moment you caught that wine bottle. I'll keep choosing you every day after. As his lips found mine, I realized I'd received the answer to both questions. The one I'd asked about his mother's approval, and the unspoken one about the true nature of what lay between us. Both answers were yes. The rest of our time in Italy passed like a beautiful dream. Days filled with excursions to Florence and surrounding villages, private wine tastings at neighboring vineyards, and quiet moments in the villa's gardens. Evenings of elaborate family dinners, where I gradually found my voice among the Russos. Nights alone with Dante in our suite, where the ancient walls kept our secrets. Sophia warmed to me fully on the 5th day, when she found me in the villa's library, struggling through an Italian poetry book. "Your dedication is admirable," she said, startling me from my concentration. She moved with the same silent grace as her son. "I want to understand," I replied, closing the book. Not just the language, but the culture. The history that shaped Dante. She studied me with those penetrating amber eyes so like her son's. "You love him." It wasn't a question, but I answered anyway. "Yes, very much. And you understand what that means? Loving a man like my son?" I met her gaze steadily. "I understand who he is, what he does." "And you accept this?" Her voice remained neutral, but I sensed the weight behind the question. "I accept him," I said carefully. "All of him." Something shifted in her expression. Approval, perhaps, or relief. "Then you are braver than most." And she crossed to a cabinet behind the desk, removing a small wooden box. "I have something for you." Inside the box lay a necklace, a delicate gold chain supporting a small pendant shaped like a key, inset with tiny diamonds. "It belonged to my grandmother," Sophia said, lifting it from the box. "She gave it to me when I married Dante's father. She said it was the key to survival in our world." I stood perfectly still as she moved behind me, fastening the necklace around my throat. The pendant rested cool against my skin, just below my collarbone. "I don't understand," I said, touching it gently. "Why give this to me now?" Sophia came around to face me again, her expression serious. "Because you will need it sooner than you think." She took my hands in hers. "Our family's strength has always been its women, Ellie. The men may appear to lead, but we are the foundation, the backbone." Her grip tightened. "Sometimes the conscience. Has Dante done something I should know about?" I asked, sudden unease prickling along my spine. "My son keeps many secrets," she replied. "Some to protect himself, some to protect those he loves." She released my hands. "But remember this. In our world, secrets are both weapons and shields. Know when to use them as each." With that cryptic advice, she left me standing in the library, the weight of the necklace feeling heavier than its delicate construction should allow. That night, as Dante and I lay in bed, I told him about his mother's gift. His fingers traced the key pendant, then the line of my throat beneath it. "It was her most treasured possession," he said quietly. "She's never given it to anyone, not even Lucia." "She said it was for survival," I murmured, watching his expression in the moonlight filtering through the windows. What did she mean? Dante was silent for a long moment. "My mother survived many things, my father's temper, rivals who thought her weak after his death, betrayals from within and without," his hand stilled against my skin. "She learned to bend without breaking." "Is that what you expect of me? To bend?" His eyes found mine, intense even in the dim light. "Never. I would never want to change who you are, Ellie." He kissed me then, deep and possessive. "But our world, it changes people, whether they want it to or not." I pressed closer to him, seeking the security of his embrace. "As long as we face it together, I can handle anything." His arms tightened around me. "Together," he agreed. But something in his voice held reservation that I was too tired, too contented to question that night. We returned home to find winter's last grip finally broken, the city blooming with spring's renewal. I stepped back into our routine with fresh perspective. My relationship with Dante deepened by the time with his family. The necklace from Sophia remained around my throat, a constant reminder of acceptance and warning both. 3 days after our return, everything changed. I was reviewing Dante's schedule for the week when Diana entered my office. Not the apartment's second bedroom that I'd been using, but a proper office Dante had arranged for me in his corporate building downtown. "Mr. Russo needs you at the penthouse," she said, her usual composure slightly frayed. "Immediately." "Is something wrong?" I asked, already gathering my things. "He'll explain." She hesitated. "Take the private elevator when you arrive. Security has been instructed to expect you." The car ride to the penthouse was the longest 20 minutes of my life. My mind raced with possibilities, each worse than the last. Had something happened to Sophia? Had there been some business crisis? Was Dante himself in danger? The building's lobby was eerily quiet when I arrived, the usual staff replaced by men I recognized from Dante's security team. They nodded me through without speaking, their expressions giving away nothing. The private elevator required a fingerprint scan, something new since our departure for Italy. It ascended smoothly to the penthouse, where the doors opened to reveal not Dante, but Marco, the security chief I'd come to respect over the months. "Where is he?" I asked without preamble. "In the study." Marco's voice was carefully neutral. "He asked that you go directly there." The penthouse felt wrong, too quiet, too still. No staff visible, blinds drawn despite the bright spring day outside. I made my way to the study, dread building with each step. I knocked once, then opened the door without waiting for a response. Dante stood by the windows, his back to me, silhouetted against the thin strips of light filtering through the blinds. He didn't turn when I entered. "Dante?" I moved toward him, concern overriding caution. "What's happening?" "When was the last time you spoke to Michael Reeves?" he asked, his voice unnervingly calm. I stopped, the unexpected question catching me off guard. "Michael? I haven't seen him since before I met you." "Maybe a year ago. Michael had been a waiter at Rosario's, fired shortly before I'd left." "Why?" Dante turned then, his expression a controlled mask I hadn't seen directed at me in months. He held out a tablet. "Explain this." On the screen was a surveillance photo of me, entering a coffee shop I didn't recognize, dated 3 days before we left for Italy. Next to it, another photo, me apparently sitting across from a man whose back was to the camera. "I don't understand," I said, genuinely confused. "This isn't me. I've never been to this place. The timestamp coincides with your lunch hour that day," Dante continued, voice eerily detached. "You told me you were shopping for our trip." I stared at the photo again, disbelief giving way to understanding. "Dante, that's not me. Look closer." He took the tablet back, studying the image with narrowed eyes. "The hair's similar, and she's wearing a coat like mine," I continued. "But her build is different. She's shorter." I moved closer to him, fighting the urge to touch him when he was so clearly walled off. "Why would you think I'd lie about meeting someone?" "Because Michael Reeves isn't just your former co-worker," Dante said, setting the tablet down with careful precision. "He's been working with the Moretti family, our main rivals, feeding them information for months." The floor seemed to shift beneath my feet. "That's impossible. Michael was just a waiter, like me." "No," Dante's eyes never left mine. "He was placed at Rosario's specifically to monitor my monthly visits. He's been informing for the Morettis for years." "And you think I'm... what? Working with him?" The accusation was so absurd I almost laughed, until I saw the genuine doubt in Dante's eyes. "You can't seriously believe that." "What I believe," he said carefully, "is that there are too many coincidences. Your miraculous save with the wine, your perfect suitability for the position I needed filled, your quick adaptation to my world." Each word struck like a physical blow. I took a step back, then another, shock giving way to anger. "So this was all a test? These past 6 months? Italy? Your mother's approval?" My voice broke on the last word. Something flickered in his expression. Pain, perhaps, or regret. But it was quickly subsumed by the cold calculation I'd seen him use with enemies. "I wanted to be wrong," he said quietly. "I've never wanted to be wrong about anything more in my life." "You are wrong," I insisted, my hand unconsciously rising to touch Sophia's necklace. "Call her. Call your mother. She saw something in me you apparently can't." "My mother doesn't know everything," he replied. She sees what she wants to see, a woman who makes her son happy. She doesn't see the larger game. There is no game, I cried, frustration mounting. Dante, everything between us has been real. Every moment, every word. I moved toward him again, desperate to break through whatever had poisoned his mind against me. Look at me. Really look. Do you honestly believe I could fake what's between us? For a moment, just a moment, doubt flickered in his eyes. Then his phone chimed with an incoming message. He glanced at it, and whatever vulnerability I'd glimpsed vanished instantly. You need to leave, he said, tucking the phone away. Marco will escort you to a hotel. Your things will be sent there. Just like that? Disbelief made my voice barely audible. After everything, you're throwing me away based on a mistaken photo and paranoid suspicions? It's not just the photo, he said, turning away. There's other evidence. Things I can't ignore, no matter how much I might want to. What evidence? I demanded. Show me. Let me explain. I can't risk it. He still wouldn't look at me, not with what's at stake. Realization dawned, terrible and cold. You never fully trusted me, I whispered. All this time, the parts of your life you kept separate, the secrets. You always held something back. His silence was confirmation enough. I removed the necklace, Sophia's precious gift, and placed it carefully on his desk. Whatever you think I've done, whatever evidence you think you have, you're wrong, I said, surprised by the steadiness of my voice despite the tears threatening, and someday you'll realize that. I just hope it's not too late when you do. I walked to the door, pausing with my hand on the knob. I love you, Dante Russo. God help me. I probably always will. But I won't beg for trust that should have been freely given. The study door closed behind me with a soft click that somehow sounded more final than a slam. Marco waited in the hallway, his expression carefully blank. Ms. Winters, if you'll come with me. I can see myself out, I said, straightening my shoulders despite the weight crushing my chest. Mr. Russo's instructions were clear, Marco replied, not unkindly. For your own safety. My own safety, as if I were still under Dante's protection, even as he cast me out. The irony might have made me laugh if I weren't fighting to hold myself together. I followed Marco to the elevator in silence, numb with shock and grief. As the doors closed, I caught one last glimpse of the penthouse that had become my home, the place where I'd found both sanctuary and heartbreak. The hotel has a suite ready for you, Marco said as the elevator descended. Your things will arrive this evening. Mr. Russo has arranged for an account to cover your expenses until you decide on your next steps. His careful phrasing told me everything. Dante hadn't just ended our relationship, he'd erased me from his life entirely. A clean break, like cauterizing a wound. How generous, I said, not bothering to hide the bitterness. Please tell Mr. Russo he can keep his blood money. I managed before him. I'll manage after. Marco shifted uncomfortably. There are complications you may not be aware of, Ms. Winters. It would be safer to accept I'm aware of the complications. I cut him off. I've lived them for 6 months, but I'd rather take my chances than remain indebted to a man who thinks so little of me. The elevator reached the lobby. 2 more security men waited, ready to escort me to the waiting car. I stepped forward, then paused, turning back to Marco. When you see him next, I said quietly, tell him one thing for me. Marco nodded once, waiting. Tell him I forgive him. The words tasted like ashes, but I meant them, not for my sake, but for his. Because that's what love is, seeing someone clearly, flaws and all, and choosing them anyway. 3 days later, back in a shabby apartment not unlike the one I'd left behind half a year ago, I received a small package. No return address, no note. Inside was Sophia's necklace, the key pendant gleaming in the dim light of my new temporary home. I put it on, fingers trembling slightly. Whatever came next, I would face it with the strength Dante had once seen in me, the strength he'd forgotten in his fear and doubt. The key rested against my skin, cool and familiar. A reminder that some doors, once closed, can still be opened again, if you have the right key and the courage to turn it.